be a great idea to show the class what it was like, quote unquote, in the good old days. So he's going around asking the class, who wants to volunteer, right? Everybody's raising their hand but me. Timothy, Sarah, Josephine, literally everybody but me is raising their hand. I'm not looking at him, but I can just feel him staring at me, wanting me to raise my hand. But I'm standing 10 toes down, I'm not raising my hand. The teacher has the audacity to say, Maya, I want you to volunteer. Mind you, I'm the only black student in the class. Off the rip, I'm like, hell no. I'll get a 0. I don't care. I don't need the grade. And then with no hesitation whatsoever, he reaches in his bag and pulls out this fucking whip. And I'm like, yo, I can't do this. Tell me why he looks at me with a straight-ass face and goes, get over here, nigga. My heart drops to my stomach, bro, and I could tell he was dead ass. He didn't crack no smirk or nothing. This was the most serious I've ever seen him in my life. As I'm backing up, I'm like, yo, he whips me, bro, and it wasn't no little baby ass whip either, bro. He winded all the way back and said, yeah, hit me right in the neck. My neck is burning. I can't take this level of disrespect. I looked at that old ass teacher and I kicked him in the kneecaps, bro. With no regret, I will do it again in a heartbeat. I do not care.
Oh, hell to the no. Now, I'm not sure if that's the actual teacher that this young man is speaking of. But what I have seen a lot during last month, during Black History Month, which is a farce in itself, since Black history should be taught throughout the entirety of school, just as much as Caucasian history is taught, and just as much as I really hate the fact that Hispanic history is not even a full month, where it's like September 15th to October 15th. No, history should just be taught as history. The black side, the white side, the Spanish side, they are all the sides should be taught during history. If it's American history, it's American history. If it affected America, it affected America. But this mentality of good old days, and this is the make America great again. America has never been great for people of color. Not in its past. In its past, America has been one of the worst countries that it could possibly be for people of color. But yet people want to go back and think that, oh, families were more close-knit back in the day. There were more marriages back in the day. People were financially able to afford life back in the day. There are certain things that would suggest that. But I think some of the stuff that people are not recognizing. Families were more tightly knit together. One, did you know that women, prior to the 1950s, 60s, if they were to have gotten a divorce, then they were considered a pariah on society. That they were excommunicated from the community that they had been in their entire lives. Prior to the 1950s, most of the time the man was the one who had got the children instead of the women. And they were just sent out there to struggle on their own. Prior to the 1950s, women could not charge their husbands with rape. So it wasn't close-knit, and women took on a lot of burdens because marriage was such a wonderful thing for them back in the day, in the good old days. It was just the mere fact that women didn't have rights in your so-called good old days. This is why women put up with bullshit of men having additional families outside of the one that they had created with that woman, because the woman didn't have any opportunities. But then once women start getting their opportunities, 70s, 80s, 90s, up until today, women aren't putting up with that bullshit, as well as they shouldn't put up with that bullshit. So for women, there were no good old days. There were none. And black people were under segregation, under Jim Crow, under slavery, and all these other situations, having to create green books and all these sorts of things. There were no good old days. And even to today, we are still dealing with police brutality and unfair wages and redlining and the U.S. highway system taking away land using eminent domain. There were no good old days. And if you were poor and white, you still had certain levels of white privileges of things you didn't have to deal with, but you were marginalized as well. They took your land through eminent domain. You were considered to be beneath the elites and still were denied opportunities for higher education and better job placement. So even for you, there are no good old days. This is why, and I'm not trying to be too political here, but this is why Trump said in the 1980s on an Oprah Winfrey show that if he ever ran for president, he would run as a Republican because they are stupid. And y'all forget that. Just like Democrats forget that Joe Biden in back in the day said that he didn't want black people and undesirables to be able to come into his community and neighborhood, and that they will bring all their crime, and supported Bill Clinton in his his three strike bill to incarcerate more and more black people. Y'all easily forget what these politicians stood for and stand for, and think that, oh, they've changed now. No, there were no good old days. There were no good old days. Like my pappy used to say, those were the bad old days. I love this younger generation that's coming up, because they have access to information to which I did not have when I was coming up. It was much more difficult to get this information, and a lot of things were considered victim mentalities and things of that nature. If you were to come out and complain and talk about police brutality, to talk about redlining, talk about them flooding our cities and burning our cities down, those things you were considered being in a victim mentality, when in truth those are just things that happen in this country. But this younger generation has that information, and they're not standing for it. And these old ass teachers who think that they're going to still brainwash these children, hail to the no. So I salute this young man. Stand 10 toes down. Don't let a grade determine whether or not you participate in some bullshit. So y'all have a great day, and remember always, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.